Welcome everybody. It is us. We are the Critical Dispatch number 6, as opposed to number 5, because nobody likes number 6. Welcome. Today we're going to have Keith O. Williams joining us. He is a candidate for House District 55 in the state of Alabama. I am just awaiting word for everybody. I am just awaiting word for waiting clearance to begin the meeting. We're going to go ahead and share this screen. All right, I am going to do a final audio check. System test, audio check, checkity check, audio. I'm a checking the audio. All right. Jacob will be with us in a moment, as well as Keith O. Williams. We thank you again for joining the broadcast. Let's go ahead and get started. We're gonna go ahead, hit that fire button. Oh yeah. One moment, just checking something. All right, I was just sharing the wrong screen for a moment there, but now we are in prepared. Moment, just checking something. All right, I was just sharing the wrong screen for a moment there, but now we are in prepared. Moment, just checking something. All right, I was just sharing the wrong screen for a moment there, but now we are in prepared. I am not hearing other people. Jacob, can I have you speak for a second? I'm only hearing me. Looks like. Let me see. Because it looks like I'm only hearing me right now. Yeah, that's the thing. I am hearing everybody else through my own headphones, but let's try this way. That's the thing. That's the thing. The broadcast is only hearing me. The broadcast is only hearing me. And I'm sharing the screen. I'm sharing just straight up the full screen. Okay. That is a little weird. Let's see, because that's coming through my phone. Let me pause that. I was checking the audio on my phone. That is weird. We apologize, Keith. We apologize, Keith. This worked last time we did this. This format worked totally fine the last time we did this, which is funny. Um, that that is fair. Let me see if that helps. Audio original select a speaker. My microphone quality is incredible. That's not that I'm not worried about. Um, that is weird. So I am weird. My audio is coming through fine. The Zoom audio is coming through. The Zoom audio is muted even when y'all are talking. Yes. This format works totally fine the last time we did this, which is funny. Um, okay, I think I might have figured it out. Try speaking now, real quick.
Yo, Mr. White.
Perfect. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is since actually we should have time. This is the Zoom meetings are on a the Zoom meetings are on a time limit, but we should have some time. But yeah, thank you for your patience, everybody. Because what I wasn't doing was sharing. I wasn't sharing system audio, but now I am.
So now you can fix the problem.
Yes, all parties are coming through clearly.
Okay, good deal. Love you, buddy. You want me to do the intro now?
Yes, you can go. Yes, you can go ahead. I will monitor. I will continue to monitor on the side. I'm going to mute up real quick so I can listen to the broadcast as I go.
Hello, anyone and everyone inside and outside of our communities, respectively. Welcome to Critical Dispatch 6, a show about politics in Central Alabama, which includes the 6th Congressional District and also includes House District 55, which Alabama State House District 55, to be clear, which our guest today, Keith Williams, is running for. Keith Williams is a long-term virtual and real-life acquaintance of mine. He is a community organizer for various causes around Birmingham and Jefferson County, who has on multiple occasions advocated at our state capitol and state legislature in Montgomery. He's a Birmingham Neighborhood Association president and just an all-around smart, intellectual, passionate guy. Welcome to the show, Keith.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here on today.
Yeah, so I promised you that the first question would be about the Waterworks Board. So describe for the audience as succinctly as you can the situation with the Central Alabama Waterworks Board, formerly known as the Birmingham Waterworks Board, and what citizens can do about it.
So basically, it started with the Alabama State Legislature passing Senate Bill 330, which gave the state the authority to take over the Waterworks Board. So that's how it happened. It started like probably March of last year. And in April of last year, we're coming up about a year down since that bill was signed into law by Governor, Ivey. And the entire Jefferson County delegation was kind of split on their support. We had some Senate members that in Jefferson County that voted yes, and then in the House, you had most of them that voted no. And that's how we ended up in the situation that we're in right now. Now, currently, the Central Alabama Waterworks Board is doing a major overhaul in their operations. And one of the reasons why they're doing this is it's already been reported that the waterworks is in some financial trouble. It was reported because of that, their credit rating actually dropped. So because they're having financial problems, they're having operational problems. So their number one objective right now is trying to save money. So what they're doing is they're laying people off. Presently, there's about 200 people or so that have been laid off. This also includes some individuals that we got chemists, we got people that make sure that our water quality is up to par. They are going. If you are trying to go to the property and pay your water bill, that's out of luck too, because it's shut down as well. So you basically will have to go to like places like Walmart, Piggly Wiggly, or you have to go online. Unfortunately, because of that, when you call or go online or go to these different stores to pay your bill, they charge on an extra convenience fee on top of your bill that you have to pay. And so for a lot of families, that's um, kind of putting an extra strain on their finances. They're already dealing with high grocery prices. They're already dealing with high gas prices, obviously, you know. And then electric price bills are all through the roof. So this is just one more way of inconveniencing people. Okay. And as a candidate for Alabama State Legislator, we have to look at this from a policy standpoint, because through these laws and policies, we're able to hold folks like the Waterworks Board and the Public Service Commission accountable. Now, last week was a major development with the Waterworks. Um, Before I get into that, let me get to how we got to this point right now. It started back in February after the Super Bowl, where 35 people was laid off for a surprise drug test. Then sometime after that, 135 people were let go, and roughly about 70 positions that they was intended to hire and have already funded, you know, they cut that too. So that's where your 200 plus
Keith,
employees came from.
if I may ask, because I actually don't know this. So how are these positions funded at the Waterworks Board? Like, where does the money come from?
The money comes from their operating budget. About 2/4 of their budget is used to pay, you know, employees. Every business have like a payroll account, so they use that payroll account, which is separate from their operating account. For some businesses, there's a line item in their budget for to pay employees. It's usually a payroll uh, line item that's in their budget. So that's how they pay their employees. And so when you have, you know, jobs that are being cut, um, that money is taken out of that payroll account or that payroll line item, and it goes back into the general pot or the general fund, as some people would call it. So that's how that works. Now, how do we get to this point presently? Last Friday, I attended their monthly Waterworks Board meeting. And I was there at 8 o'clock in the morning, and you know, did the usual security check and everything. So not only were we was not allowed to go into this meeting, I'm talking about the citizens, the ratepayers, we was not allowed to go into the building. I mean, into the meeting. And then the sheriff's department, they kicked us out of the building and locked the door. And that's when the protest had erupted outside on the steps. As a podcaster, the Neighborhood Guide Report, that's what the podcast is called. We was out on the scene as it happened. We also captured what happened when Security wouldn't let us into the meeting. And when the Jefferson County Sheriff's deputies was getting ready to put us out. So all of that is live. It was raw. It was very emotional. And I actually broke the story before the news came out because the local media in Birmingham was actually inside of the meeting. But what I covered what was going on the outside.
Wait, so
So
sorry, they said they let local media into this. They let local media into this building totally fine, but they kept you in particular and your podcast out. That is shameful.
um, it was not just me, it was you had a lot of ratepayers that was there too. And we all got kicked out the building.
Yeah, and to be clear, right? So what I was getting at in the previous question, because I didn't know, but my understanding, right, is that it's a quasi-governmental organization, right? So it's kind of independent, but ultimately it's funded by the people who receive the services. But at the same time, they're a monopoly, right? So this is their customers, but on top of that, they're not like Target or Walmart or like Kmart or anything, right? Where you have a bunch of different options. They're a utility monopoly, right? So this would be like if you had one shop in town where all of the customers, right, or all of the guests, as they like to call it in some customer service, institutions, came up and said, yeah, we have a problem with what y'all are trying to do, these changes y'all are trying to make. And they wouldn't let them in, their own customers, to come make complaints.
Oh yeah, you can say that it's a monopoly because it's the only regional water utility in Central Alabama. So yeah, you can call it a monopoly, but it's also what is known as a state public corporation. This corporation was established by the state legislature in 2001. That was 2 years after the city of Birmingham had signed over the assets. And from that point, the legislator had created this public corporation. Now they're talking about dismantling this public corporation, bankrupt it, and make it a public trading company, a company where you can buy stocks, you can get dividends and things of that nature. Well, they can't do that. They can't do that without legislative approval because, again, it is a public corporation that was set up by the legislature. Only the legislature can do that.
And to be clear, right? Because it took me a while to come around on this. I live in Homewood. I've lived in Homewood for most of my life. So from the outside, right, my perspective, and I now know I'm wrong about this now that all of the history and the facts have been laid out cleanly in federal court cases that have been reported, right? But my understanding is it was not just like a government institution setting this up. It was a government institution setting it up with private investors. And then the state came in and said, hey, this is ours now, and the state wasn't, and we're going to make a bunch of changes, to add this and that seat and make a bunch of changes to the power structure. And that's how we got here with the name change and the power structure and everything, right?
Yep, that's pretty much what happened. That's pretty much what happened, made possible by Senate Bill 330.
Yeah. So to be clear to everyone, right, it's not just a matter of like it may seem, like I thought it was when I was misguided and didn't know all of the facts and the history. It's not just some kind of like regional or partisan power struggle. It was like, oh, I want the city to own it. I want the county to own it. Your instinct may be, well, why shouldn't Homewood have a voice? Why shouldn't St. Clair have a voice? Because that's kind of how like it may have been billed by the state, right? What it may seem like from the outside, if you don't know the history, is like, well, these people are on outside of the city of Birmingham proper are also ratepayers, so why don't they get power? But it's a fact of private property rights, right? And on top of it, overriding home rule or city rights, right? So it was initially an agreement between these private investors who, if I'm not mistaken, some of these private investors are still alive, right? They're like parties to the lawsuit.
Yes, that's correct. But I do want to clarify some things here. Now,
Sure.
the original structure before the takeoff was this: you had 9 seats, right? Um, you got 5 counties that are part of the system: Jefferson, Shelby, Walker, Blount, and St. Clair. Now, nearly 41% of, nearly 91% of 91% of the ratepayers are in Jefferson County. The other 9% make up the other 4 counties. So just like your House of Representatives, if in the House of Representatives, the U.S. House of Representatives, the amount of representatives in the House for each state is based on population. So it's set up the same way. So the more customers that you have, the more representation that county will have. And so since Jefferson County has 91% of the ratepayers, then they should have the majority of the representation, which was in the past. And then every other county has at least one representative. But when the state took over, Birmingham only got 2 representatives out of 9.
So Keith, this is starting to sound a lot like part of the move here was actually a form of gerrymandering. Does that sound fair to you?
Wouldn't call it gerrymandering. I believe the correct term is a power grab.
Yeah. I mean, and that's, not gerrymandering is kind of like a political science term. Not everyone understands. So power grab is much more straightforward to some folks who may be listening right now or maybe watching it later, right after the live feed is done and posted. But yeah, it doesn't sound like it's really fair at all, to anyone who was originally involved with the original Birmingham Waterworks structure. It dilutes the power of majority, ratepayers inside Jefferson County and Birmingham proper. It messed over, the original private investors, and it messed over the city that made the agreement with these private investors. And now we're at a point where, we're getting these layoffs, and, I understand, right? Probably as long as we have an economic system that looks anything like what our economic system looks like right now, private institutions are going to have to sometimes do layoffs. Public institutions are sometimes going to have to do layoffs. However, it seems like my instinct is to just side with the workers no matter what, because I think it's misguided anyway, right? I think in the end, it's going to end up costing more money, because if you think about it logically, right, when you lay a bunch of people off and you're already seeing reports of like problems with quality, eventually you're going to have to compensate for that, right? You're going to have to either hire new people again, right? We saw this with Doge, right? They went in, they're like, oh, we're going to save a bunch of money by firing da-da-da-da-da. But then they had to like, please come back, we'll pay you, it might be the same type of thing where they have to compensate for it by bringing back new people anyway, or paying the people who are there more. So it might not save money in the end. Even if it does save them money, there might be a downgrade in quality. But, no matter what argument you might be able to make for or against layoffs, and I haven't really seen anyone who's a big fan of the layoffs, to be honest, it just seems like it's fruit of a poisonous tree. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right,
we should have never gotten to this point.
Right, but because you laid off essential people, like the ones who, make sure that our water quality is, up to par, it's going to cost more in the future to fix that. And then there was a vote on the same day, that they say, hey, we're going to take the fluoride out of the water. So they're trying to cut corners to continue operating, but the decisions that they made is going to be costly in the long run. And we already getting reports. I'm getting reports already of people saying that, hey, my water quality is going down south. So we already beginning to see the effects of the decisions that they have made.
Yeah. So thank you for discussing that with us, Keith. I know that you have been on the ground trying to cover it, Facebook. I know you're passionate about it, as you should be. And yeah, I just, it's a very important quality of life issue and labor issue going on right here in the heart of the Birmingham area. So before we move on, do you have any other comments on that, Adam?
I was just going to say, for added context, Keith mentioned fluoride. I wanted to add in some quick context for those that don't know. Fluoride is a very important chemical for dental health. There have been situations where, when fluoride was removed from local water supply, people very quickly realized the error of their ways and very quickly put it right back in. You can look this up. I just wanted to add in context for those that don't know.
Oh, and also before we move on, just want to say a few things now. Monday they had a mass meeting in Pratt about there was elected officials, advocates, concerned citizens. We was all there, whether it was in person or virtually, and we were trying to come together to see what can we do to hold the workers accountable and to provide resources for the workers that was fired. Now, if for those of you who are listening, will be listening, if you want to take part in that, here's what you can do. Text the word stand up, STAND UP at 205-442-0717. Again, text the word keyword stand up to area code 205-442-0717.
Is that
Once
all?
you do that, you'll get.
I apologize.
What's that?
Is that all one word? Because I'm putting that in the stream chat right now for people to see later.
Yes. Yes,
Alrighty.
stand up.
Thank you.
The S is in capital letters and the U is in capital letters. Everything else is lowercase letter. Again, that's stand up. Text that to area code 205-442-0717. Once you do that, you'll get a series of prompts, follow the prompts, and they will get you connected. And we can go from there.
All right. So my second question I have for you now, I know a lot about your organizing work and your work as a Birmingham Neighborhood Association president. Which specific neighborhood? Remind me again, by the way.
North Titusville.
North Titusville?
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah. But I was curious about some what paid jobs have you had in the past? Because I'm guessing you haven't been paid a wage for most or any of that organizing stuff.
No, you're right about that. So I am a business owner. I own a small business dealing with information technology work. It's called Greater Works Business Services. So that's where most of my time is part of my time is spent, on that. So that's pretty much where my bread and butter comes from. So I work for myself.
Gotcha. How many employees, if any, do you have?
Right now I have a few that work with me.
Gotcha.
And so I'm the only full-time person. Everyone else is part-time.
All right. So this brings me to my next question, which is our first specific, a very specific concrete policy question. Do you support creating a minimum wage for all adult employees in Alabama of at least $10 an hour, which has been proposed by some Democrats in the legislature. I don't think it passed through committee. Honestly, I don't think it's going to get through committee with the days we have left, or if it is, it's definitely not going to get passed, right? But do you support that move?
I'm going to go a step further. It has to be at least 15 for me. But if we can compromise and get $10 an hour and then work our way up, then yes.
Yeah, I think there's a couple ways to look at it. You can go based on like the inflation from what the minimum wage was last raised to, which one of my things I think is interesting from a partisan or ideological perspective, and you are an independent candidate, right? You're leaning more towards like the Democratic Party and liberal ideas, if it's fair to say, on a lot of things like this. But you are technically independent, and in the past, this wasn't even raising the minimum wage just a little bit, if not raising it to like substantially, which would be like doubling the pathetic, federal minimum wage that Alabama defaults to, right? It wasn't really that much of a partisan issue, right? So people don't always realize the last time that the minimum wage got raised to $7.25, it was actually because of legislation that President George W. Bush passed. And then Obama got the credit. I mean, I have no problem with him getting the credit because I think that was, I think that was good for the politics of the nation at the time that people were favorable to Obama, but Obama got the credit for that minimum wage raise because it took effect under him, right? But there was a time when like Democrats, Republicans, a lot of independents, including small business owners like yourself, I've seen polls from years ago, agreed with raising the minimum wage at least a little bit or substantially. That it is definitely not kept up with inflation because we've had, we always have inflation. That's a constant pretty much, so if you're looking at inflation, it has to be at least like 10 or 11. If you're looking at a livable wage, it has to be closer to like 15 or 20. I think, I would probably prefer above 10, but, I'm fine with 10 just because, it is a conservative state, but also to my understanding, Alabama does cost a little less than some other states, right? But the idea that it's $7.25 right now is so ridiculous for so many reasons. Not only can no one actually live on that, right? But no one even pays $7.25 an hour, right? The minimum wage should be actually like raising the floor from what it would be otherwise, right? Because if you are making $7.25 as an adult, I'm sorry, you need to leave that job. Obviously, that's the burden is on the employer, but that's it. Like almost no one even pays that. You know what I mean? So that just illustrates how pathetic it is.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And so this whole campaign is talking about affordability. How can we address the everyday cost of living for families and individuals across the state of Alabama? And so, having a decent wage or a livable wage is part of affordability because right now you have families all across Alabama. They're struggling to live. You got high gas prices, you got high water prices, you got high utility prices, you got high grocery prices. And all of this comes from a policy, point of view. Like for example, the legislature could totally eliminate the grocery tax. Right now it's at 2%. It used to be 5%, but through myself and other advocates, we was able to cut down the grocery tax tremendously. But now we're seeing it's time for us to totally eliminate the grocery tax. And that will put some money back into the pockets of working families in Alabama. But one of the things that the legislature was talking about was the fact that, we don't want to, mess with the education trust fund, right? That's their whole thing about why they don't want to eliminate the grocery tax. Well, a couple of weeks ago, the Alabama State Legislature passed the largest education budget in the history of the state, over $10 billion. $10 billion with a B now. So it's
Yeah,
no
I heard about
excuse.
that on Capital Journal, and I was glad to see that. I hope that they spend it well. I don't necessarily, the whole so-called school choice with like tax voucher credits and blah blah blah. I have nuanced views on it. I'm gonna say I don't, and it's definitely a little that adds to kind of the hypocrisy and kind of the contradictions, which is where I thought maybe you were going with that, because it's like in the past they've been like, oh, we can't get rid of the grocery tax, it'll affect the education trust fund, but at the same time there's like, hey, private schools and like disproportionately like middle class people who are going to private school anyway have some education money, have a tax cut, you know what I mean?
Definitely, on one end of their mouth, they're talking about, public schools, and then the other end of their mouth, they're talking about, school choice. So which one is going to be? Which one is going to be? And with that high amount of a budget for education, there's no reason why the grocery tax should not be eliminated at this point. One of the things that Alabama has to realize is that we are a welfare state, which means that we receive more money than we are. Is more money coming in, like from the federal government, than we are going out. So we have to generate money into the state of Alabama, and one of those ways, of course, would be the lottery, the education lottery. Which will sustain the education trust fund and any other thing that Alabama wants to do for as long as the state is in existence. That's the problem that they're having in the state legislature, among the fact that we got special interest groups that are trying to keep the lottery or any type of casino or any type of gambling out of the state. That's been going on for the last 50 years. But meanwhile, you can go to Mississippi, Tennessee, Georgia, and Florida and spend your money there. You basically funding their projects, you funding their education.
Yeah. So
well, why not keep that money? Why not keep that money here?
Yeah.
In Alabama?
So it's funny. I considered writing one of my questions to be about the lottery and the potential, the lottery proposal and potential lottery revenue, but I didn't end up writing in my questions. But since we went there anyway, I want to ask you. So I will say, I think that among actual citizens, right, among actual like. Can y'all hear me? I mean, I know that the fire truck's going by. Do y'all still hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yep, we can hear you loud and clear.
I can. I
Yeah.
just wanted to let y'all know the Zoom plans are on a time limit. This meeting has a 2.5 minute left. I can just reset the meeting real quick in a moment. If Jacob, if there's still more you want to talk about, and if Keith, you have time.
Okay, there are a couple more questions.
Okay, so what I'll do?
What would it look like if we my time limit was like 1 p.m. for my personal reasons. So what would it look like if we reset the meeting as far as like what the live feed looks like? Can we just like do a like screen over the live feed and keep it going and then come back?
We should be able to. Give me a second to check with that. Yes, what I'll be able to do is just start up a new meeting. It should only take a second. But if we don't have that overlay now, I'll have it ready for the future, and I'll just keep talking through. I apologize, gentlemen. This the technical difficulty kind of ran up the time limit a little bit.
Water break.
If y'all have time, I'll reset the meeting and we'll be back in a second.
Yeah,
That
I
sounds
have
good
time.
to me.
Alrighty. Give me just a moment. I'll send y'all a new link when it's ready.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So, give us just a moment. We're going to have a bit of an interlude here. We're going to delete that meeting. Zoom kind of had Zoom with the Zoom. It's kind of inconvenient. It's got time limit on the default plan. Delete this meeting. Yes, we just had it. But yeah, in the future, you'd usually see like a "We'll be right back" screen. But yeah, I will set that scheduled for 12:45. I will send out the invitation again. Now, gentlemen, if y'all are watching, it doesn't have to start at 12:45. I'm just setting it a little further out just to be sure. I'm going to send it to both of them. Now, what we will do is I will just share this screen by itself. Might be missing the system audio. Oh, yeah. New meeting link is live. We appreciate you joining us and we appreciate your patience with us. In the future, what I'm going to do is figure out a way to have a unadulterated time, unaltered time limit. So it should be sent to them both. I will resend it. Okay. I see the problem. I think I just sent them an empty email. All right. I will keep. We appreciate you joining us once again, and we appreciate the patience with us. Now, what I'm going to do for the stream replay is try to figure out timestamps for how long this break lasts. All right. What I will do is head over here. We are just going to have us a little interlude. Share tab, share system audio. All right, just going to do one quick double check. System audio, screen one. Let's fire it back up.
Here's a fun fact about the word gerrymander. It's actually named after a dude. So like a long time ago, there was this dude named Jerry. This sounds like a dad joke. I swear I'm not making this up, guys. I read this in 12th grade poli-sci and have read a Wikipedia page about it since. But there was a governor whose last name was Jerry with a G.
By the way, we're back.
Yeah, and he signed a bill that enabled them to create a really weird-looking district that looked like a salamander. So they dubbed it the gerrymander, and that's how that became a word. Pretty funny, yeah?
That honestly is kind of a funny story.
Okay, I am back. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and everyone can hear us loud and clear. So that also gave me time, fortunately, to formulate how I wanted to ask the question. So a lot of supporters of the state lottery, right? Because currently the lottery and gambling are both banned under the Alabama Constitution, right? So those who support a lottery amendment, or at least a chance to vote on a lottery amendment, differ about what exactly it should fund. The explanation that has been reported from this year has been that I believe that it would pay for Medicaid and teacher pay specifically. You know, I would probably go to education, but not necessarily so narrow, right? Like, I don't think it just has to go to teacher pay. Maybe it can also go to, I don't know, education infrastructure improvements. You know, it could go to, for example, of hiring new teachers so that classrooms are smaller, and that they're not so short-staffed. It could go to decreasing college tuition. Currently have, as of this, late date, and a couple of trust funds that are unfunded by the state, including the Housing Trust Fund and the Transportation Trust Fund. Some of the lottery revenue could potentially go to those. So I wanted to ask you, Keith, what would you prefer if we passed a lottery and had a lottery? What would you prefer that the revenue go to?
I totally agree about the education piece too, where we're not only making sure that teachers have a decent salary, but we also want to make sure that our infrastructure is up to par, the schools are up to par, that our curriculum is up to par, because we want to, for example, we want to bring back trades into the schools. So for those individuals who do not want to go to college, they can get trained and certified right there. When they graduate, they can get certified, they can get licenses, then they can walk into a high-paying job straight after graduation. So those are some of the things that I would like to see that the lotteries pays for, as well as the education trust fund. Now, you mentioned something about Medicaid, so let's talk about that a little bit. So the governor can provide provisions for that, or the legislator can't provide, provisions for that. Now, that's money that is available from the federal. for a 2-year window, which will give Alabama opportunity to sustain some of the costs. And if we have any money left over from the lottery or another revenue source, then that can go to pay for the Medicaid expansion in the state of Alabama. I think it's roughly about $258 million that Alabama will have to endure that cost, and then the federal government will come in and they will pay the rest of it. So that's how that is. And
yeah,
this,
it's the thing about Medicaid expansion is there were better arguments against it when it wasn't as funded as much by the federal government. So there were years pre-COVID, it was the Medicaid expansion, right, was originally set up under the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare, which was passed in, I believe, 2010. There were some provisions that didn't take place until a few years after that, but it was legislation passed in 2010, and one public funding part of it was Medicaid expansion, which ultimately came down to whether states would want to accept it. Now, red states made a point of not accepting it, but one of the, like Alabama, right, including at the time Governor Robert Bentley. Now, there was actually a stronger fiscal argument because at that time the federal government would have covered part of it, but they wouldn't have covered as much after a few years. Then the burden would have been on the state. So Robert Bentley came out and said, I'm opposed to Medicaid expansion because, with the way our state system is and the way we approach taxes, we just can't do this, but since then, right, because he left office under threat of impeachment, which paved the way for our current governor, Kay Ivey, who is his lieutenant governor. He has since written op-eds saying it's time for Alabama to accept Medicaid expansion money. It would actually save us money. They've crunched the numbers, because of all of the federal money. And it could, it would be a good way to keep rural hospitals from closing, because rural hospitals aren't taking in enough revenue.
Yep, you pretty much hit it on the nail right there, about that. As far as the lottery is concerned, I know everybody that I talk to, and it's been on social media a lot, that people will only support an education lottery to where most of the money will go towards education. And that also includes a no-cost breakfast and lunch program for all students, regardless of who you are, what your household income, is. That's one of the things that I definitely support. Preliminary reports saying that it would cost Alabama $14 million a year to implement that. And in the budget over $10 billion, that's pretty much not that chunk change.
Yeah, but I wonder what reports say about how much money it might save, or what the social benefits would be for like providing that free breakfast, because there are societal benefits that go beyond just like feeding that child that morning. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Also, the fact that this is even a debate whether or not kids should pay for food is kind of like I don't know how I feel about that. Like,
Yeah, they're children, right? Like, what are you going to tell them? It's like, oh, you should get a job. It's like, well, I'm in school and I'm not really even old enough to work. It's like, well, it should be on their parents. Some parents are poor, and you can judge them for that, but it is what it is. So like, what are you going to do for these children? And what is the like argument against this, when I think it would be a net benefit overall?
And I totally agree with that, especially with the large amount of money that's in the Education Trust Fund. I really don't understand why the folks in Montgomery are even, arguing over something like that. Let's just get it done. And that's what I intend to do when I get to Montgomery. I'm not going down there to play games or to be buddying with these politicians. I'm rolling up my sleeves. I'm going down to the State House, and I'm going to work for the people. It's time out for all these political games and this political ideology. Is keeping people in the dark, literally. Is
Yeah, so
people are
that's
getting to the point that they really cannot afford to live, and it should not be that way. Also, too, I want to point out is that what Governor Bentley left out, was that Alabama needs to bring in these sources of revenue. And that's one of the things that a lot of candidates that are running for state office, they're not talking about that. You got a few that saying, we're going to bring, in new jobs, but they're not being specific as to how, that's going to be done. And so
that's a good point. That's a good point because, like, Keith, you know this, right? What's our largest employer in this state?
what's the largest employer in the state?
Yep.
Uh,
I didn't want to put you on the spot here, but the fact is it's UAB, and that's not just because of that's partially because of the university, right? It's a very popular university, but also because of the health system, the massive health system. So like we're like it's great, right? If you want to say, we should do incentives to bring in, factories or like oil fields or whatever, and I'm not necessarily in favor of all of those projects or all of those incentives anyway. But also the fact is we already have a great, healthcare economy and a booming like healthcare industry. And so if you talk about things like Medicaid and federal healthcare grants and federal research grants, well, that's, that helps build on what we already have.
Right. So we talk about Medicaid expansion. That's definitely going to create jobs. Having a lottery in the state of Alabama is going to create jobs. And this is something that a lot of people are not talking about. The cannabis hemp industry, the one that the state legislature dismantled by passing HB 445. That would definitely bring a lot of money to the state. Look at states like Colorado. They deschedule, criminalize, and they're making it a whole different, industry. And states like Colorado, they are booming because of the cannabis hemp industry. And I don't know if you guys are aware, but there's a whole lot of products that you can make out of hemp, which is cheaper to make.
Oh yeah,
you can do it in mass production, cheaply. And the cost savings will go directly back to the customer. That's a huge revenue source in states like Colorado. Alabama.
Oh, so what you're telling me, right, is that this issue isn't just right to light up a doobie if I want to, or take some Delta 8. It's also a fact of the matter you can create these great environmentally friendly products out of hemp, right, for all sorts of things.
Yep. So we're talking about a twofold thing when it comes to cannabis and hemp. Deschedule it, decriminalize it, and make a profit.
Yeah. So what you were previously saying about how you intend to approach Montgomery, should you get there as a legislator, I thought that was a good point to transition into my next question, which is, you asked me to sign this term limits pledge you were talking about. Tell people about this term limits pledge and why it's important to you.
So there's been a lot of talk nationwide about, whether you are a member of Congress or in the state legislature, they've been like there forever. We got in the state legislature, you got folks like Jabbo White who've been over there for 50 years.
My senator, raise your hand in chat if you're 89 years old and applying for a 4-year job right now.
And they're just holding up these seats. And, younger people like us, we don't have the opportunity to get in these seats because you got folks like him that want to hold too much power. And it basically said, you better do what I say. Don't do what I do. And these young folks like, man, we not listening, to that because that's not how you bring knowledge and wisdom to younger generations. So with that being said, I support, term limits because an individual should not make a career out of politics. Go out into the real world and work like we do. You shouldn't be in these positions for 30, 40, 50 years. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And yes, I definitely do support term limits.
Yeah, I was about to
Yes.
say, didn't we partially fight a revolution to get away from political figures serving just for life? Like, it's kind of not our brand to allow politicians to
Yeah,
serve
we somehow circled back to having like an aristocracy,
And it's not really being, taught until
Yeah,
until recently.
there's also an economic side of this, right? Which is that incumbents typically tend to be in a whole different tax bracket and a different, tax and education, a whole different economic and educational category than a lot of the folks who would run against them or who would run otherwise to be new leaders,
Yep, and I totally agree with that. And speaking of taxes, so I got this, this booklet from Alabama Rise that talks about, it summarizes the tax structure. Did you know that folks that make less than $100,000 a year pay twice as much in taxes than household?
Yep, I believe that would be. I didn't know those, right? But what you're illustrating there is
That's exactly right. That you make, the more you pay in taxes.
Yeah, it's definitely. Some people argue flat tax is fair. I don't think it's fair. It doesn't even have a flat tax system. Effective ways on paper, we have a regressive tax system.
Oh yes, and so we have to change that. I don't agree in both of them. I believe that the more that you make, the more you should pay in taxes.
Yeah,
that seems to be.
Oh yeah, no, I'm definitely for progressive taxes. And I think corporations should be paying more too, including into local education trust funds.
Yeah, so you can actually go to the Alabama Rise Facebook page. They talk about that, and they got a free booklet that you can request if you want to know more about the tax structure in Alabama in ways that we can advocate for having a progressive tax system in Alabama. Just go to the Alabama Rise Facebook page, and they can help you out with that.
Yeah, so this brings me to I may, after the last question, right? You think that's possible based on what we're working with here?
As far as I'm aware, we do.
Gotcha. So here's my last question. We didn't talk at all really about your main opponent. I don't know the polls in District 55. I don't know who would be mathematically the front runner. I'm guessing it would be Representative Hendricks, because this is how these things typically go. I know the other opponent we also haven't talked about, but the way I wrote the question is about Representative Hendricks specifically. And, he did win the special election last time. That's how he got here. And he does have supporters. So what would you say as his opponent, right? And as someone who I presume, you've had some like personal conversations with him or in-person conversations with him. What is Representative Hendricks's greatest strength as a leader?
He basically have in common, like, any other person that's, in office. He's an incumbent. So incumbents tend to, have more support and more money and, more resources. But in contrast, and I'm just going to be 100. I've always been 100. I'm not going to change is that we really don't know where the incumbent stands, on the issues. If you go to his website, um, no, no news, none of that. Is basically says, who he is. If you want to volunteer or donate, that's it. So why would I even want to go to a website like that?
Yeah, and honestly, I didn't know that. I of course I don't live in House District 55. I actually live in a Republican district where the uh, representative had no opponents. But so I haven't really been to his campaign website, I don't think. But I don't like campaign websites like that. The main thing I vote on in primaries, or support on in primaries, is based on what people say on their websites, and especially what they say about policies. You know what I mean? And there's also is a pattern you pointed out of Representative Hendricks abstaining from issues, right, which muddies the water
Yeah,
even more.
that's include HB House Bill 13, that ridiculous immigration bill. He abstained, from that, but at the same time, he voted yes to House Bill 445, which pretty much dismantled the cannabis industry in the state of Alabama. So this is the type of person that we are, dealing with. We don't know which way the wind is going to blow. We really don't know where he typically, stand on. Only thing that the voters can go by is that they will have to research his voting record.
So was and I don't know where to take this one exactly, but was I correct in my assumption? Have you talked to Representative Travis Hendricks in person since he got elected?
Yes, I have.
And do you have anything of note about that you would like to disclose?
Oh, I absolutely do. Basically, this guy is basically a seat warmer. I like to call, he's down there operating what I call a defeated spirit. Well, what do you mean by that? He basically told me, well, what can I do? There's a super majority in Montgomery. There's little to nothing that I can do to really, affect change. And I'm like, well, what the hell are you here for? That's not why we elected you. We're not expecting you to win every battle, but we are expecting you to fight. I mean, you're going to win some battles, you're going to lose some battles, but you can't win if you don't fight. And it seems like this guy has no fight, in him, and I thought that really just rubbed me the wrong way. And I kept thinking about it and kept thinking about it. And I said, what the hell? I'm going to run.
I always say,
That's what led me to run.
sorry, I always say if you think you're gonna fail, there's a very high chance that you already have, and
Yeah.
that's something that I would add on to your thoughts about Hendrix.
Oh, and I totally agree with you, Adam. That's the kind of mindset that he has. And so that's why he's kind of like the absent-minded professor, and that's not what we need. And I want to point this out too, that the central theme of this campaign is affordability and addressing the everyday cost of living of working families in Alabama. And so from here on out, that's all I'm going to be talking about. Not going to be talking about, what happened in Montgomery in the past, as we got one candidate that's talking about he served in that position before, and from 1999, to 2007. And so this individual was saying, I have the experience. I've been to the state legislature before. I know the system right. But I'm here to let y'all know that from after he left office in 2007, almost 20 years had passed by since this individual has served in that capacity. Folks, Montgomery has changed in the last 20 years. What happened in 2007 is totally different than what's going on in 2026. We're talking about a whole new
I
game,
was
a
10
whole new
years old.
set of
Yeah.
people. You know what I'm saying? So,
I was
so
7. I'm
what?
5 now.
So the experiences that this individual had, from that time frame is different, from today. And yes, we have a super majority Republican because that changed hands in 2000, 10. They're operating on a whole new system that is not working for no matter what, just not working for the people of Alabama. And that's
Yeah.
one thing that I can't have, to you guys. So we don't need to be working within the system. We need to be trying to change this system so that it can work for all Alabamians.
Yeah. So I'll let you do your plug, but there's a second part to this last question that I wanted to ask you. So as I mentioned, you're a community organizer, you're a business owner, you're a neighborhood president, right? I know you're a man of faith, or you're a Christian, right? So do you go to church? I
I
mean, like,
do.
that's not the question, but right, you may even like take some kind of like formal or informal leadership role in your church, right?
I
So
do.
you may not be an elected official, but you are a leader. So I
Mhm.
wanted to know, right, honestly and from your heart, as Keith Williams, what is Keith Williams's uh, uh, how are you trying?
I would say my greatest weakness is that I'm stubborn. I mean, it would take a whole lot to try to change my mind on certain things because once my mind is made up, I'm going to, run with it. And so this is the time that people need to hold me accountable, because I'm stubborn. I'm so used to going in this direction because, I know what I want. I know where I want to go. And that's what I'm focusing, but I don't know everything. And this is where self accountability and then others who are holding me accountable, that's where they're coming. Because I can learn from anybody, and everybody. I just need to be teachable and be willing to listen.
Yeah, that's a good answer. You have any thoughts on that answer, Adam?
I was going to say stubbornness can serve to your advantage in terms of politics because from what I've seen, the ones that tend to hold their the ones that hold their ground the most tend to make the most impact, tend to make the biggest dent in my experience, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Sometimes it can create some enemies, whether it's good, or bad. It's kind of how you individual takes it personally. But yeah, I consider it to be, a weakness because sometimes it comes with arrogance. Or, we say, we get the big head, sometimes that does, happen. But there are some good things about being stubborn. There's some bad things about, being stubborn. Like for example, sometimes stubborn people, they don't want to change. They like things to remain the same. Something like that. I mean, that doesn't apply to me. I welcome change. And that's one of the reasons why I'm running, because it's definitely time for change. Again, we have a system in Alabama at the State House in Montgomery that's not working, for the people. So my thing is to learn about this system. And once I learn about this system, work with those that are willing to change it. Because as long as it stays the same, you know, the affordability issue that I've been preaching about for months and years is not going to be addressed.
Yeah. Well, as usual, Keith, it's been a pleasure. Um, I hope Adam feels the same, but I get the feeling that he does.
I do. I do. Honestly, based off of what I'm hearing so far, I don't live in House District 55, but if I did, you have earned my vote 10 times over.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It's really about connecting, having, relationships. If I may a little bit, want to talk to. So it's my leadership is based on what I call the ACT framework. The A in ACT stands for accountability that's rooted in action. I'm not just making talking points, especially political talking points. I'm actually listening to what people have to say, and from that, I spring into action from a policy, standpoint. The C stands for community engagement. That means not talking at people, but talking to people, forming those relationships, figuring out what's that common ground is. And when I say common ground, what do we have in common as people? From that, we take that and we work together to bring change to our communities. And then the T stands for transparency. Transparency that educates, people on, for example, what the legislator can and cannot do would be an example of the education piece of transparency. And then we inform people of what's going on in Montgomery and how the decisions that we make would directly affect them. And so that is where the ACT framework comes from. It's the foundation of my leadership. Is exactly what I've been doing now. That will not change when I'm elected. In fact, I'm going to kick it up a notch because that's what we do here in the old double nickel.
Beautifully said. Well, anyway, I'm going to have to split soon. I don't know about Adam. I think one of the reasons we said Wednesdays and Thursdays because Adam typically doesn't work, but I actually have to work today fairly soon. But we do have time, in fairness, to let you, if people want to support you, if they're impressed with what you've said, or even if they want to explore an option other than the other, at least two candidates, where can they go and what can they do?
Okay, so first of all, you can go to my website. It's Keith, Keith, 4FORAL, like in Alabama, HD 55 at keithowilliams.com. That's the Facebook page. It's jam-packed with information. Talks about the ACT framework, talks about my platform, talks about, why I'm running, how you can plug in. It even talks about what a legislator can and cannot do. And it also gives information about voting, where your precinct are, whether or not what district you are. So it's just jam-packed with information. Also, you can go on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at K.O. Williams, WILLIAMS, P as in Paul, C as in cat, on all social media platforms.
All right, and that's all?
I just wanted to confirm.
That's pretty much it.
Sorry, I just wanted to confirm because I
Right.
have everything. I'm writing everything down in the description of this broadcast. You said Keith 4AL HD55 at Keith O. Williams. You said that was a general website or that was a Facebook page?
That's the website.
Okay. I was just clarifying. And your social media handles are KO Williams PC.
Yes.
And that just has
Facebook. That's Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
And that just has a capital K, nothing else?
Oh, they're all lowercase.
All right.
All lowercase letters.
All righty. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure because I'm putting every social media link you just told us about in the description of this broadcast.
Okay. There's also a link to where if you want to donate, it is pretty much laid out everything that you want to know about the campaign. It's on their website. And for really in-depth situations, including my stance on policy and issues, you can go to my Facebook page. Of course, that's K.O. Williams PC. You can go there. I try to post at least daily on different issues. And you can also check out my podcast. It's called The Neighborhood Guy Report on Facebook. This is where my underground investigative reporting comes in. You don't want to miss that. We cover everything from your backyard to Washington, D.C. is what we do.
Yeah, full disclosure, guys. I've donated multiple times to him through a third party. Like that website is like what's it called? But it's
Donor
set up
Box.
as so it's not Dropbox. What is it?
Donor Box.
Right, it's Donor Box. Right, it's a donor box set up under Friends of Keith Williams, and he has a specific goal. And my philosophy about it is like, I've talked to him. I like the direction he's taken his campaign. I like, the accessibility that Keith has offered, and I've known him for a while. So I just wanted to support a friend, in reaching that goal. And, Lord knows I couldn't self-fund, that goal, which in the grand scheme of things, sadly, is like 75,000, right? It would be like a drop in the bucket to some politicians, including especially a lot of incumbents. However, if I could self-fund that goal legally and plausibly, I would, because I think, when you're talking about someone like Keith, whether someone, fails or succeeds in winning shouldn't come down to money or reaching the goal.
And I definitely want to thank you for those kind words. Listen, whether I make that goal or not, it's not important. The most important thing is that I continue to do what I do, engage with the community, continue to be an advocate, and just be my true self. Now, every dollar counts, whether it's $1, $5, $10, whatever. Don't let the amount discourage you from, giving, because dollars add up.
The minimum is $3, by the way. But yes, it definitely does. Yeah, it's about coming together to fund a campaign. It's like a small dollar strategy is what they would call it.
Adam, I will actually send that link to you so that you will have it and everything. I know you was getting ready to say something, so the floor is yours.
I was just going to say, you guys had mentioned that even small donations count. There's another podcast I listen to that regularly starts a quote unquote dollar train, and even with a bunch of donors donating as little as $1, they still reach their goal. So every little bit helps. You don't underestimate the power of the small donations.
Absolutely, and just want to let you know that we're not driven by big corporations or the special interests. This is a grassroots campaign, and it's funded by the people.
All right. This has been a Critical Dispatch. Adam, I'll see you tomorrow, hopefully in person, because we'll both be off of work. Everyone else, I hope to see you tomorrow. I hope you see us tomorrow as we interview congressional candidate Case Dixon. Keith Williams, have a good week and good luck.
Thank you so much for having me. Y'all enjoy your day.